Peace, bud. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Talk with AVC. I'm your host, AVC, and we are going into a college football segment today. Let us get right into it. So there's been I usually don't do a just college football segment, but there's been so much going on in that landscape that I have to make it its own segment. So it's bowl week. So this is kind of the last chance for teams to make their case for the college football playoff. As it stands right now, here are the top four, or here's the rankings. Georgia 1 at 8-0, Michigan 2 at 8-1, Alabama 3 at 7-1, Cincinnati at 8-0, Oklahoma State 8-1. I'm sorry, that's their conference records. Georgia 12-0, Michigan 11-1, Alabama 11-1, Cincinnati 12-0, Oklahoma State 11-1, and at number 6, Notre Dame at 11-1. Now, all 6 of these teams realistically have shots of making the CFB. Let me explain how. Georgia, it's simple, just win. Michigan, same thing, just win. Bama, you need to win. If you lose to Georgia, you're probably out. The committee's never allowed in a 2-loss team. Even if you're Bama, 2 losses, you're probably done. Cincinnati, win. Hopefully the committee doesn't screw you out of it. I can't imagine they will now, given that sorry, I'm getting over a bit of a head cold. I can't imagine they'll screw you out of it this time, considering that you're already in. If you were at number 5, then I would say it's a little dicey. But since you're already in at number 4, best advice though, I would win against Houston convincingly. Oklahoma State, you need a win, and you need Alabama to lose. If you win and Alabama loses, you win the Big 12, you're a 12-1 team, you will most likely get in as 3 or 4. I'm not sure where they'll put you. They could put you below Cincinnati. They could put you above Cincinnati. It really depends on the committee. The committee could do either. So that's a pretty simple one for you. Just do that. Notre Dame. Okay, this is where it gets a little complicated. So if Notre Dame wants to make it in, a couple of things need to happen. Oklahoma State needs to lose to Baylor. Well, not necessarily. First things first, Alabama has to lose to Georgia. That's number 1. Number 2, the second thing that would need to happen is either Michigan needs to lose to Iowa or Oklahoma State needs to lose to Baylor. One of those, 2 of those 3 things need to happen. Well, number 1, Alabama has to lose to Georgia. If Bama wins, then throw this out the window. If Bama wins, throw all of it out the window because Bama will be in, and then it will be Bama, Cincinnati, Michigan, and Georgia. Unless somehow Michigan loses and Bama wins, then the whole thing could be thrown in the chaos. Because if Michigan loses and Bama wins, then Oklahoma State could sneak in. So I guess, yeah, for Notre Dame, 2 or 3 things has to happen. Some combination of at least 2 of these 3 teams have to lose. Oklahoma State, Michigan, and Alabama. 2 of those 3 teams have to lose their bowl games for Notre Dame to make it in. Even then, it's a slight stretch. And the main reason for that is the committee may be judging Notre Dame a little harshly, given the fact that they just lost their head coach. Now, this is the bigger subjects that I want to get into. And I'm going to address the Notre Dame one, Brian Kelly one first, and then I'm going to go to the Lincoln Riley one because I love to laugh at Oklahoma. And I'm going to get the sadder stuff out of the way first for Notre Dame. Okay, so here's the thing with this. Brian Kelly is kind of the Mike Tomlin of college football. What do I mean by that? The team's always competitive. They always put up a solid record. They're never downright bad under Brian Kelly. You're never going to have a bad team under Brian Kelly. But it seems like at times he lacks that extra gusto to get you to the national championship. They've been to the Natty once, I believe, under Brian Kelly, the one against Bama. They haven't been back since. And they've had a tradition under Brian Kelly of losing big games. The big game they have every year, they lose, which has created this whole overrated Notre Dame stigma. and I'm not even going to say it's unwarranted. So he leaves Notre Dame for LSU. This is just my opinion. I don't really know what Stephen A. Smith was thinking about this, since he seems to think LSU is like a 10 times better position than Notre Dame. It's not. It's actually relatively similar, if not slightly better, only because it's in the SEC. The only advantages that LSU gets over, there are a couple advantages. Here are the advantages that going to LSU over Notre Dame would give you. Number one is academic standards for recruits. At Notre Dame, student athletes are required to have, I believe, a B+ average in order to play. So right away, that takes a huge chunk out of your recruitment. You can't recruit guys who got out of high school just passing with a C-. That doesn't work at Notre Dame. So you're kind of handcuffing recruits there to begin with. Number two, the Deep South is a much more frugal recruitment area than the Midwest. It's just how it is. It's warmer, a little bit more. The conference has a little bit more prestige. A lot of pro-ready style teams. Not to say that Notre Dame hasn't been, because Notre Dame's done a very good job of putting players in the league. So that's not necessarily the biggest thing. But just the Deep South for high school talent and private school talent just has a much richer group of people who would be going to a school like LSU instead of a school like Notre Dame. It's warmer. It's not cold. It's not near Chicago. It's near New Orleans. So it's a slightly better market for them down there. The only other, the main reason that this happened is it was time. I know a lot of Notre Dame fans had been wanting Brian Kelly to go for a while now. He's been with the team, I believe it's 12 years now. That's a long, long time for a coach. And as of right now, their replacement for him, from what I've been reading, is Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator they just hired this past year. I do like this hire for a couple of reasons. The other two main candidates were Luke Fickell, the head coach of Cincinnati, and Matt Campbell, the head coach of Iowa State. Two reasons why I don't think either of these were happening. One, I don't think Luke Fickell was happening, at least not until after the CFP, and by that point, hard to tell that you would have lost too many recruits. Luke Fickell is not going to leave Cincinnati right when they're on the chance of doing something in the playoffs. He'd do it after. I just don't think it would have been this season, because he's been building, especially since they just got the Big 12 bid. There's not really a huge incentive for him to move unless there was a huge amount of money. Matt Campbell would have been a fine pick. The only thing with Matt Campbell is, while he's been a great coach at Iowa State, literally the only good coach they've ever had, the only thing with Matt Campbell is it's kind of a low-name hire for Notre Dame. It's kind of a mediocre hire. And again, I feel like you would have lost too many recruits, similar to what happened in Oklahoma. But you keep the hire in-house, and the fact that Tommy Rees is staying, and given the fact that Brian Kelly didn't actually do any play calling for Notre Dame, you keep your two offensive and defensive play callers in Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees. A lot of your defensive recruits came because they wanted to play for Marcus Freeman. None of the offensive recruits should leave because they're going to be doing the same system under Tommy Rees. Same system stays. Marcus Freeman is a young, inspiring coach. The players love him. He's a defensive wizard. So in that case, this was the right move for Notre Dame. Keep the hire in-house. Keep it to your highly touted defensive coordinator. And keep your recruits. Keep building what you've been building, and they'll be closer to a CFP to a natty before you think. Really, all they need now is just either the elite defensive talent or an elite quarterback, and they'll have a shot. They really will. With all the guys in the transfer portal, I'm not a fan of the guy, but maybe Spencer Rattler, maybe Caleb Williams. I don't know what their GPAs are, but but some feelers out there. So Tommy Rees would now have complete control of the offense. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not a huge Tommy Rees fan. As a play caller, sometimes I think he's an idiot. But His system is fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. He should prioritize running the ball a little bit more. And if Notre Dame gets back to their elite offensive line status, they should be fine. And just a quick word about Brian Kelly. He's done this before, by the way. Like, he's done this exact thing where he leaves in the middle of the night for another job before, right before a big game. He did this to Cincinnati when he came to Notre Dame. He has a history of doing this. So I'm not at all surprised, but I do wish Brian Kelly luck in LSU. Good luck getting stopped by Bama. That's what I recommend. I think it's easier to go undefeated as Notre Dame and make the CFP as an independent with Notre Dame by going undefeated than it is to win the SEC. So good luck with that. So the only other thing in the segment that I wanted to cover is the Lincoln Riley departure. Now, this one was also shocking. You know, everybody has said, oh, he lied. Well, he didn't really lie. He just said he wasn't going to be the next head coach of LSU. He didn't say he wasn't going to be the next head coach of USC. They didn't ask him that. So Lincoln Riley's going to USC. Why? A couple of reasons. And it's pretty obvious. One, money. USC offered him a large amount of money. The contract details have now been released. But from what I can speculate, it's a large amount of money. Probably a house out there. He'd probably live out there in Southern California. What else? Well, Oklahoma is moving to the SEC. I've been on record saying I don't think this was a good move for Oklahoma. I don't think this improves your chances of making the CFP. I don't think this even improves your recruiting class, even, to be honest. They didn't have a problem getting 4- and 5-star recruits already in Oklahoma. So why are you going to the SEC and making it harder? You're going to take 2 steps back at least. And now without Lincoln, you may be taking like 5. So this is going to be rough for Oklahoma. You've already lost a bunch of recruits because they're now going to go play for Lincoln or for other schools because they were only coming here for Lincoln. Your top quarterback prospect of the future literally transferred to USC. And both your starting quarterbacks, Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler, are set to transfer out. So great job there, Sooners. Oh, my God. So where does that so again, why USC? Oklahoma's moving to the SEC. What's easier to win? The Pac-12 is USC, where your only real competition is Oregon, or the SEC with all those teams? It's the Pac-12. And USC is a rich tradition program. As a Notre Dame fan, I hate USC, but they've been so bad over the last few years. Probably be good for college football if you could get that program fired up again. If you get that, again, California is a great state to recruit from. So if you could get a program like USC fired up again, if you get a rivalry like USC Notre Dame really good again, that'd be great for college football. So the mecca of college football, I wouldn't go that far, Lincoln, but you might be close. I think this is a huge move for USC. I think this will turn them around very quickly. I could see them being in the CFP and Pac-12 championship discussion next year. I could see it. Lincoln is a very, very good coach, and I could see him putting them in the conversation ASAP. So we'll see how that goes. Sooners, I would hysterically laugh at you, but you know what? You're dealing with enough right now. I'm going to leave it be. I'm not going to take the low-hanging fruit. Thank you all for listening to this college football segment of the Talk with ABC. We'll be back in a moment with a brief NHL and MLB segment as the lockout has begun. Oh, Jesus. Thank you all very much for watching. I will see you in the next segment.